The universe follows an immutable protocol. Before any external change, you must die inside first. Every collapse, every loss, every rejection is the forced installation of the new identity that magnetizes the reality you desire. Reality isn't luck, fate, or chance. It's the exact mathematical projection of your internal frequency. You don't attract anything. You project who you are, and the universe has no choice but to reorganize everything to mirror it back. The tests don't show up to punish you, but to calibrate. They probe whether your transformation is real or just cosmetic. And when the old self senses the threat of extinction, it fights back. It creates drama, crises, setbacks. These aren't signs of failure. They're proof that the demolition has already begun. The greater the resistance, the closer you are to breaking free. Understand this: challenges don't interfere with manifestation. They are the manifestation in progress.
Most people live a fundamental lie about how reality works, and this lie keeps them trapped in cycles of frustration that they themselves have created without realizing it. There is a universal protocol operating behind the scenes of every human experience, a mechanism as precise as gravity, but deliberately hidden by the very simplicity of its operation. This protocol determines that no external change can occur without first experiencing a complete internal death, not metaphorical but literal in terms of psychological identity. What spiritual traditions have whispered for millennia, and what quantum physics now confirms through different language, reveals a disturbing truth. The universe does not respond to requests, desires, or even actions. It responds exclusively to crystallized states of consciousness. But here lies the secret that transforms everything. Before allowing you to inhabit a new reality, the universe needs to verify whether the internal transformation is genuine or just a superficial performance of the ego trying to manipulate circumstances. Consider the nature of what I am really means, not as an abstract philosophical concept, but as the primordial causal substance of all manifestation. When someone declares I am, they are invoking the fundamental creative power that shapes worlds. This is not a vague religious statement. It is a technical description of how consciousness operates. I am represents the unchanging center around which all experiences orbit. One can conceive of being rich, poor, healthy, or sick, but the center remains constant. It is this constancy that allows transformation, for without a fixed point of reference, there would be no possibility of conscious change. The universe functions through a principle called least action, the path of minimum resistance between two states. In physics, this governs everything from the trajectory of planets to the behavior of light. In consciousness, it manifests as an assumption, the psychological equivalent of least action. When you genuinely assume a new state of being, not through effort, but through total acceptance, the universe automatically reorganizes itself to reflect this change. But, and this is the crucial point, between assumption and manifestation, there is always a bridge. This bridge is not empty. It is populated with events, circumstances, and yes, specific tests that seem to contradict exactly what you are trying to manifest. When you seek abundance, intensified scarcity appears. When you look for love, rejections appear. When you desire health, the body presents new symptoms. These are not signs of failure or divine punishment. They are systematic authenticity checks, necessary calibrations that test whether the internal change has penetrated beyond the surface of the conscious mind into the depths of the subconscious. External reality, what we call the physical world, has no existence independent of the consciousness that perceives it. This is not speculative philosophy. It is the foundation upon which all experience is built. All things, when they are admitted, are made manifest by the light, and this light is consciousness itself. Every object, person, and circumstance in your life is literally consciousness crystallized into specific form, responding precisely to the particular arrangement of your IAM substance. The universe's testing protocol operates through three interconnected fundamental mechanisms. First, the quantum mirror law establishes that you do not attract reality, you project it. Second, the vibrational incompatibility principle determines that it is physically impossible to inhabit a reality for which you do not possess the corresponding frequency code. Third, the ego death protocol ensures that every genuine transformation requires the complete dissolution of the identity that created the current reality. Understanding these mechanisms is not an abstract intellectual exercise. It is a practical transformation technology that, when applied consciously, converts every obstacle into confirmation of progress, every resistance into evolutionary fuel, and every apparent setback into preparation for a quantum leap. The universe is not testing your patience or faith. It is verifying whether you have truly become, in essence, the person who would naturally possess what you desire to manifest. The ancient mystery schools of Egypt guarded knowledge that modernity has tried to bury under layers of superficial rationalism. The Hermetic principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without, was not mystical poetry for initiates dulled by incense. It was a precise technical description of how reality structures itself in interdependent layers of manifested consciousness. The Hermeticists understood that the outer world does not exist as a separate entity, but as a mathematical projection of the inner world, a truth that quantum physics rediscovered when it observed that the act of observation collapses possibilities into specific realities. The quantum mirror law operates through a mechanism that transcends the linear understanding of cause and effect. When James Allen wrote that circumstances grow from thought, he was not offering a comforting metaphor, but describing a verifiable process. Every thought sustained with sufficient intensity imprints itself on the quantum field as a manifestation instruction. The universe, functioning as an infinite processor of conscious information, has no choice but to reorganize the particles of reality to correspond exactly to the dominant mental impression. There is no moral judgment in this process, only technical correspondence between internal frequency and external manifestation. Joseph Murphy expanded this understanding by demonstrating that the subconscious mind does not distinguish between vividly imagined experience and real physical experience. For the subconscious, both are equally valid as reality instructions. This explains why visualization without corresponding emotional transformation consistently fails. You are trying to program new software while the old operating system continues running the same limiting protocols. The subconscious, which controls 95% of your mental operations, continues projecting reality based on programming installed during the first 7 years of life, when the brain operated predominantly in theta waves, the state of natural hypnosis. The vibrational incompatibility principle reveals why intensely desiring something while maintaining contrary beliefs creates only amplified frustration. It is not a matter of deserving or divine judgment. It is pure structural impossibility. Consider a concrete example. A person vibrating at the frequency of scarcity trying to receive abundance is like a fax machine trying to receive email. The hardware does not process that type of signal. A mind programmed with money is difficult, literally, cannot process the experience of financial ease. The brain will delete, distort, or ignore evidence of abundance to maintain coherence with its base programming. This is why people win fortunes and quickly lose everything. They received something for which they had no psychological infrastructure to sustain. The universe did not deny permanence out of cruelty. The person simply could not maintain a frequency incompatible with their fundamental vibrational structure. Neville Goddard articulated this principle through the concept of the bridge of incidents, the inevitable sequence of events that must occur between the current state and the desired state. This bridge is not built by human effort, but by the very structure of reality responding to the change in internal state. When you genuinely assume, "I am that which I desire to be," not as a hopeful affirmation, but as an accomplished fact in consciousness, the universe immediately begins to build the bridge. The events that arise, many apparently contrary to the desire, are the building materials of this bridge, not obstacles to it. The ego death protocol represents the most misunderstood and feared aspect of genuine transformation. The ego, this identity construction based on past experiences, traumas, successes, and failures, is not an enemy to be destroyed, but an obsolete structure to be transcended. When you decide to inhabit a new reality, you are declaring war not against external forces, but against the very identity you have spent decades building. The ego recognizes this existential threat and mobilizes its entire defensive arsenal. Increased anxiety, resurgence of old fears, sabotage of opportunities, and creation of dramas that confirm the old identity. This rebellion of the old self is not a flaw in the process. It is confirmation that the transformation is penetrating layers deep enough to threaten established structures. The more intense the internal resistance, the closer liberation is. The ego fights proportionally to the magnitude of the intended change. A small change generates small resistance. A radical identity transformation provokes what may seem like a total collapse of known reality. Hermetic wisdom, Neville Goddard's revolutionary teachings on the nature of creative consciousness, and Murphy's psychological discoveries converge on a fundamental truth. You are not a victim of circumstances, but their architect through the power of I Am. Goddard demonstrated with surgical precision that controlled imagination and attention, well sustained in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, constitute the only technology necessary to transform any aspect of existence. The universe has no agenda of its own beyond faithfully mirroring the content of consciousness assumed as true. The tests that arise on the path of manifestation are necessary calibrations, authenticity checks that ensure the new reality will be sustainable when it finally materializes. Without this preparation, you would receive what you are not prepared to maintain, like a child receiving the keys to an airplane. The best-kept secret about the nature of reality is not hidden in ancient texts or quantum physics laboratories. It is operating openly in every moment of your experience, invisible only because of its omnipresence. The universe's tests are not obstacles to manifestation. They are the manifestation happening. Every turbulence, every apparent setback, every intensification of problems when you seek solutions, all of this constitutes the literal process of installing a new identity at the cellular and quantum level. The universe is not checking whether you deserve it, it is checking whether you have become. Neville Goddard revealed with incomparable clarity that the assumption of the wish fulfilled is the ship that carries you over the unknown seas to the realization of your dream. But what Goddard also explained, and what many prefer to ignore, is that between boarding this ship and arriving at the destination, there exists a crossing through what he called the bridge of incidents. This bridge is not optional, it is structural. When you genuinely assume a new state of consciousness, when you truly feel yourself to be what you desire to manifest, the universe immediately begins dismantling the old reality while building the new one. The process works through mathematical precision, not through moral reward. When you sustain the feeling of, I am prosperous, while your bank account shows red numbers, you create cognitive dissonance that the universe must resolve. But, and here is the crucial point that separates superficial understanding from mastery, the universe resolves this dissonance not by instantly changing external circumstances, but by first testing the authenticity of the new assumption. If at the first sign of external contradiction you abandon the new identity and return to old patterns, the universe interprets this as an instruction to maintain the current reality. The proportionality between the magnitude of desire and the intensity of tests follows an inexorable mathematical law. Small change activates small test. Wanting to improve an existing relationship may generate a revealing argument that forces deeper communication. Medium change generates medium turbulence. Seeking a new career activates a series of rejections that test commitment, family criticism that questions sanity, and temporary financial problems that force creativity. But radical quantum transformation, emerging from generational poverty into abundance, transcending toxic family patterns, healing from an incurable condition. This activates a complete demolition protocol. Relationships end, health temporarily worsens, finances collapse, and social identity crumbles. The magnitude of the test is proportional to the size of the foundation that needs to be rebuilt. Building a cottage requires shallow excavation. Erecting a skyscraper demands digging down to bedrock. Consider the specific mechanics of this process. When you internally declare a new identity, you are literally informing the quantum field that the person you have been until now must die so that the new one can be born. The field responds by creating circumstances that force the choice. Will you maintain the new identity even when everything around suggests it is false, or will you return to the familiar comfort of the old identity? These test circumstances are not punishments. They are opportunities to demonstrate to the universe, and more importantly, to your own subconscious, that the transformation is irreversible. The revelation that reverses all conventional understanding about manifestation is this: you do not manifest to become someone. You become someone, and manifestation is the inevitable side effect. The obsessive focus on having keeps you trapped in consciousness of lack. The focus on being releases automatic materialization because the universe cannot deliver what you genuinely are. But the universe has infallible verification mechanisms. It knows how to distinguish between someone pretending to be rich and someone who has assumed wealth as a natural state of being. The evolutionary contract that you implicitly sign when establishing any genuine desire contains clauses that no one reads. First clause: you will receive not what you want, but the experiences necessary to become who naturally possesses what you want. Second clause: the intensity of the tests will be proportional to the magnitude of the intended transformation. Third clause: abandoning the process midway means returning to the starting point, often in worse condition, because now you carry the memory of failure. Goddard taught that building castles in the air is not childish fantasy, but precise creation technology, as long as you then mentally inhabit these castles with such conviction that your current reality seems like a dream and imagination seems real. The tests arise precisely when you begin to genuinely inhabit the new mental reality. The universe needs to verify: is this a temporary cosmetic change or a fundamental restructuring of identity? Each test carries within itself the seed of its own transcendence. The financial loss that arises when you seek abundance forces you to find security beyond circumstances. The relationship that ends when you seek true love removes what was blocking your capacity to receive. The illness that arises when you seek vitality forces confrontation with deep beliefs about vulnerability and mortality. Nothing is accidental. Each event is positioned with surgical precision to force the death of specific aspects of the old identity. The fundamental paradox that governs the entire process. The universe's tests are simultaneously the obstacle and the path, the problem and the solution, the resistance and the liberation. Understanding this not intellectually but viscerally transforms suffering into evolutionary fuel. Each challenge becomes confirmation that you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, becoming exactly who you need to become. The mechanism through which the universe mirrors your inner essence operates with such relentless precision that once understood, it makes it impossible to continue living in the illusion of being a victim of circumstances. Every person who appears in your life, every situation that manifests, every opportunity that arises or disappears, all of this constitutes the exact mathematical reflection of the convictions you maintain in the depths of your subconscious. Joseph Murphy demonstrated that when you observe repetitive patterns in your external experience, you are literally looking at the crystallized content of your deepest beliefs. If relationships always end the same way, if money always escapes through the same cracks, if opportunities always disappear at the same critical point, you are not seeing bad luck or destiny, you are seeing your inner world projected on a three-dimensional IMAX screen. The universal mirror does not lie, does not distort, and does not judge. It simply reflects with absolute fidelity. When internally you maintain the deep conviction of not deserving love, the mirror organizes relationships that confirm this belief with cruel precision. Partners appear to be offering exactly the type of rejection or abandonment that validates your core belief. But here is the revelation that reverses victimization. These people are not doing something to you. They are performing the script that your subconscious wrote. Changing the cast without changing the script only guarantees that new actors will play the same roles. It is at this point in the transformation process that the most disconcerting phenomenon arises, the violent rebellion of the old self. Michael Singer, in his investigations into the nature of consciousness, revealed a fundamental distinction that most never perceive. There is a voice in your head that never stops talking, commenting, judging, creating narratives, reminiscing about the past, and projecting the future. This voice, which you have spent your entire life believing to be you, is not you. You are the silent consciousness that observes this voice. The voice is the old self, the ego built through decades of conditioning, and when you decide to genuinely transform, this voice enters existential panic. Singer's surrender experiment demonstrates something extraordinary. When you stop automatically obeying this inner voice, when you simply observe its demands without acting on them, seemingly miraculous results begin to manifest. But the old self does not accept this deposition peacefully. It intensifies the internal volume, creates imaginary emergencies, resurrects old traumas, and amplifies every fear to apocalyptic proportions. Every time you choose not to react to this voice's commands, it becomes more desperate, more dramatic, and more convincing in its attempts to regain control. The rebellion manifests through sophisticated sabotage. At the exact moment you begin to manifest the new reality, emergencies arise that demand a return to old patterns. The person determined to establish healthy boundaries suddenly receives a call from a toxic family member in crisis. Someone who decided to value their work receives an offer to work for free just this once. Someone who assumes prosperity finds an unmissable opportunity for investment that drains their savings. These are not random external tests. They are strategies of the old self to prove that transformation is dangerous and returning to the known is the only safety. It is precisely on this internal battlefield that Don Miguel Ruiz offers revolutionary technology through the 4 agreements. These are not abstract moral principles or rules of good conduct. They are specific protocols for reprogramming the personal matrix. During childhood, you were subjected to a domestication process through rewards and punishments that installed specific mental software. Money doesn't grow on trees became executable code that runs automatically. I'm not good enough became an operating system that filters all experiences. The 4 agreements are antivirus programs designed to identify and neutralize these corrupted programs. Being impeccable with your word means recognizing that every word spoken or thought is a literal spell that programs reality. When you say, "I'm trying," you instruct the universe to keep you in a perpetual state of trying. When you declare, "It's difficult," you activate protocols that guarantee difficulty. Impeccability requires constant vigilance over the creative power of language, recognizing that you are literally speaking your world into existence, word by word. Not taking anything personally constitutes psychic shielding against the projections of the outer world. When someone attacks, criticizes, or rejects you, they are not talking about you. They are revealing the content of their own inner mirror. The person who calls you selfish is confessing their own conflicted relationship with boundaries. Whoever accuses you of being dramatic is projecting their own internal theater. Understanding this is not an exercise in spiritual superiority. It is protection technology that prevents others' neuroses from contaminating your transformation process. Not making assumptions eliminates unnecessary suffering created by imaginary narratives. The old self is a master at creating elaborate stories about others' intentions, about the meaning of events, and about what will happen. Each assumption is a self-imposed mental prison. When you stop assuming and start verifying, discovering facts, instead of inventing fictions, you release massive mental energy previously wasted on imaginary dramas. Always doing your best, recognizing that your best varies from moment to moment, removes the tyranny of paralyzing perfectionism. Some days, your best is extraordinary. Other days, it is just surviving. Accepting this variation without judgment disarms the inner critic that the old self uses as its primary weapon of sabotage. When you do your best without crucifying yourself for imperfection, you remove the fuel that feeds the ego's rebellion. The implementation of these agreements is not a gentle process of gradual growth. It is a declared war against the entire personality architecture built since birth. Every time you choose a conscious word over an automatic reaction, every moment you don't take something personally, when the old you would be devastated, every situation where you verify facts, instead of believing assumptions, you are literally killing aspects of the old self and being born as the person who naturally inhabits the desired reality. Genuine transformation reveals itself not through dramatic epiphanies or cinematic moments of enlightenment, but through cumulative microchanges that literally rewire the brain's neural architecture. Martin Seligman, in his investigations into the nature of learned optimism, discovered something that completely destroys the narrative of instant transformation. The brain changes through consistent repetition of small successes, not through large isolated events. Every time you resist an old trigger for 5 seconds longer than yesterday, every moment you choose a different thought, even if briefly, you are carving new neural grooves that will eventually become highways of automatic behavior. The distinction between optimists and pessimists does not lie in some genetic predisposition or divine grace. It lies in specific interpretation patterns that can be measured and altered. Pessimists interpret challenges through 3 toxic filters: permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. When something goes wrong, the pessimist thinks, "It will always be like this." permanence. It ruins everything, pervasiveness. And it's my fault, personalization. Optimists process the same events through opposite filters. This is temporary. It affects only this specific area, and it was the circumstances. This difference is not superficial positive thinking. It is reality processing technology that literally determines which doors open and which remain closed. The brain, this plastic organ that modern neuroscience has revealed to be infinitely more malleable than imagined, does not distinguish between big and small victories when registering success patterns. When you celebrate having maintained the new identity for 30 seconds during a crisis, the brain releases the same neurochemical cascade of reward that it would release for a greater achievement. Dopamine flows, synapses strengthen, and the behavior becomes fractally more likely to repeat. You are literally addicting your brain to transformation, one microdose at a time. But here arises a disturbing implication that few are prepared to confront. Celebrating small progress while external reality still seems catastrophic requires complete death of the need for external validation. The old self needs visible proof, measurable results, and applause from the world. The new self celebrates invisible internal changes, knowing that external reality is just a delayed echo of internal frequency. This decoupling between internal progress and external evidence is where most abandon the process, interpreting the lag time as failure, instead of recognizing it as the necessary gestation period. Neuroplasticity research confirms something that Neville Goddard intuited decades before neuroimaging technology existed. The brain completely reconstructs itself based on where you consistently focus attention. Neurons that fire together wire together permanently. Every time you maintain the feeling of the wish fulfilled, despite contrary evidence, you are forcing specific neurons to fire in a new pattern. Sufficient repetition, and this pattern becomes the new default, the new automatic, the new inevitable reality. It is at this point in the process that the universe begins sending confirmations through what Deepak Chopra identified as synchrodestiny, the apparently miraculous convergence of unrelated events that conspire to manifest your intention. But synchronicity is not a magical reward for good spiritual behavior. It is a mathematical consequence of sustained alignment. When you maintain a specific frequency consistently, you magnetize events, people, and circumstances that resonate at that same frequency. The universe is not conspiring in your favor. You are conspiring with the universe through maintained vibrational coherence. The fourth principle of synchrodestiny reveals a specific mechanism. Your intentions possess infinite organizing power that commands invisible forces. But, and this is the secret that transforms intellectual understanding into practical mastery, the universe responds only to crystalline intentions sustained by unshakable emotional conviction. Vague desires, oscillating hopes, and contradictory requests create only static in the quantum field. Absolute clarity combined with emotional certainty creates a force vector that reorganizes the very structure of reality. The cosmic guarantee operates here with absolute precision. When you reach critical mass of vibrational coherence, the universe cannot not deliver. This is not a vague metaphysical promise. It is a law as inviolable as thermodynamics. Water must turn to steam at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level. A dropped object must fall toward the gravitational center. Sustained frequency must materialize a corresponding reality. The universe does not decide to deliver based on worthiness or divine timing. Delivery is an automatic consequence of specific conditions being met. Goddard called this law precisely because it operates with mechanical consistency, not divine whim. Synchronicities begin subtly. You think of someone and that person calls. You need specific information and it appears casually in a random conversation. You question whether you are on the right path, and you see repeated number sequences, encounter the same message from different sources, and receive confirmations through strangers. These are not coincidences. They are the universe responding to the increasing coherence of your energy field. The more you maintain alignment through the tests, the denser and more obvious the synchronicities become. The universe's recognition does not come as grandiose external validation. It comes as an increasing series of impossible coincidences that make it undeniable that something beyond chance is operating. But here is the reversal that few understand. The universe is not finally noticing you. You are finally vibrating at a frequency coherent enough to perceive that the universe has always been responding. The change is not in the universe's behavior, it is in your ability to decode its communications. Each celebrated micro-progress strengthens this coherence. Each small victory over the old self increases the bandwidth of your connection to the field of infinite possibilities. The universe intensifies synchronicities proportionally to your ability to maintain them without ego inflation or dependence. The confirmations serve not as prizes, but as breadcrumbs on the path, indicating that you are on the correct trajectory even when the destination is not yet visible. The final implication of this understanding completely revolutionizes the manifestation journey. You are not trying to convince the universe to give you something. You are becoming someone the universe cannot recognize. When your internal frequency reaches critical mass of coherence, when the new identity becomes more real than the old one, when you celebrate invisible progress with the same intensity you would celebrate visible results, the universe responds not by choice but by law. Manifestation becomes not a question of if, but only of when. The universal tests reveal a fundamental truth that we resist accepting. You were never a victim of external circumstances, but have always been the unconscious creator of every obstacle in your path. The universe has no will of its own, preferences, or moral judgment system. It operates as a neutral processor of consciousness instructions, faithfully materializing the convictions you maintain in your subconscious. When you understand that every test was you testing yourself through the universal mirror, the victimization narrative collapses, leaving only creative responsibility. The challenges you interpreted as punishments were the universe preventing you from receiving what you were not psychologically prepared for. Receiving certain manifestations without adequate internal structure would be destructive, not beneficial. Neville Goddard articulated this principle through the reinterpretation of scripture. "No man takes my life, I give it voluntarily." The old identity must be consciously abandoned so that the new one can emerge. The universe provides the circumstances that make this transformation not just possible, but inevitable for those who genuinely seek change. The most challenging discovery is realizing that all external resistance has always been projected as internal resistance. The difficult person in your life performs the script written by your beliefs about relationships. Financial scarcity materializes your convictions about worthiness. Illness often expresses the conflict between what you consciously desire and what you unconsciously believe you deserve. Changing the external actors without rewriting the internal script only guarantees that new characters will play the same roles. Goddard taught a specific technique. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, maintaining this sensation until it becomes more vivid than physical reality. This literally reprograms the instructions that the universe executes. Between reprogramming and manifestation, there exists a period where two realities, the old and the new, compete for expression. The tests are in this transition period, not indicators of failure, but evidence that two incompatible realities cannot coexist, and one must yield. Examine which identity you protect when resisting change. The self built through trauma and limitation has developed sophisticated survival strategies that now prevent transcendence. This self knows every mechanism to avoid pain, every justification for mediocrity, and every narrative that explains why transformation is impossible. Paradoxically, the self that promises protection is the jailer that keeps you imprisoned. The universal tests offer the choice between obeying the familiar jailer or embracing unknown freedom. The brain does not distinguish between real safety and familiarity. It interprets the known as safe, even when the known causes suffering. People remain in destructive situations because the familiar, though painful, seems safer to the nervous system than the promising unknown. The tests force confrontation with this primitive mechanism that prefers known suffering to unknown liberation. Understanding that turbulence indicates movement of consciousness's tectonic plates transforms your response to challenges. Instead of seeking a return to old stability, you surrender to the process of creative destruction, knowing that each collapsing structure was preventing the new reality. Chaos is not universal abandonment, but a necessary reorganization of reality particles into a superior configuration. The desired manifestation is not being denied. It is being prepared through a process that ensures sustainability. Each test overcome strengthens the psychological vessel. Each transcended challenge expands the capacity to receive. Each death of the old self creates space for the birth of the new. The universe verifies whether the transformation has penetrated beyond the surface to the core, where permanent change occurs. The journey culminates in the discovery that you have always been the creative I am that Goddard described, temporarily hypnotized by the illusion of separation and powerlessness. The tests were the process of awakening from this hypnosis, each challenge functioning as an alarm to wake you from the dream of limitation. Upon fully awakening, you realize there was never a journey in the conventional sense, only the progressive recognition of an eternal truth. You are creative consciousness, experiencing itself through human transformation. Intellectual awakening without embodied practice remains philosophical entertainment. The bridge between understanding and living these principles requires specific discipline. Reconnecting with the state of consciousness where you are not the mental voice, but the silent presence that observes. This state is not achieved through additional mental effort, but through systematic surrender to the silence beyond thought where I am resides. The practice consists of regular moments of conscious pause. Ask yourself, who is aware of my thoughts now? In that pause, you touch the pure consciousness that is your true nature. Goddard called this feeling yourself as I am. Not I am this or that, but simply I am, pure consciousness before any identification. With consistent practice, these moments expand until you operate predominantly from this center of conscious creative power instead of automatically reacting to conditioned patterns. The tests will continue as long as there are unintegrated aspects between your conscious and subconscious self. Each test is an invitation for greater alignment, greater coherence between what you proclaim and what you secretly believe. Mastery is not the absence of tests, but the ability to recognize them as opportunities for refinement, not as obstacles. When this perspective is established, you stop fighting against life and begin dancing with it, knowing that each apparently contrary movement is part of the choreography that you yourself, as I am, are directing. All change begins with understanding your role as co-creator, and the only way to connect with this divine intelligence is through meditation. We have developed a set of audio tools to help you access this higher state of consciousness. To learn more and get immediate access, click the link on the screen or in the comments. If this video resonated with you, write in the comments. It made sense to me.